All right. Howdy. I wanted to just talk a little bit about uh, getting values into a method in Java. And the example I want to show you is over here in this window. And in class, we've already talked about using parameters to pass in input. And this first method that I've written here, calculate1, is an example of this. We can see in this that we have one input parameter in, and when we call the method, that input parameter is then set to whatever the argument is that we're passing in. We take that value, multiply it by 2, save it to a temporary variable, and then we return the value of this temporary variable temp. Now, the use of this here in main has calculate1 being called with 4 as the argument. So 4 will be passed in for in, that will then be multiplied by 2 and set for temp, and then the value will be set to be equal to 8. But I wanted to show another way of doing this, or of passing in a value. And this is illustrated by calculate2. So in this case, calculate2 does very similar to calculate1, except instead of multiplying by 2, we multiply by 5. But the big difference is that instead of taking the value that I'm multiplying by as the value for the parameter for calculate2, I leave the parameter list empty. Instead, up here on top, I create this variable that essentially functions like a global variable. And this variable is an int that is called value, and I assign it to 10. Now this value, when I call calculate2 here, that value is what is used for value here inside the body of the calculate2 method. So then this 10 here will be used to multiply by 5, and then what will be returned will be the product 50. So if we run this program, so we'll compile this, and then we run this, you can see I have it here from a previous run. What I get is 8 and 50. So the 4 multiplied by the 2 gives me the 8, and then the 10 multiplied by the 5 gives me the 50 here in my output. One of the things that we can do with this essentially global variable here is we can change it if we want here in main. So if I want to change value to another value, let's call it 100, I can do so. Now when we run this, calculate2 will run, but using the global variable, essentially global variable value, will be set to 100, so it'll be 100 times 5 instead of 10 times 5. So I'm going to compile this, I'm going to run this, and here we go. The output gives me 8 and then 500 for the call to calculate2. So anyhow, these are just then two ways of getting input into a method for you to use in the body of the method. And if you have any questions, please just let me know. Thanks so much. Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.